Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news. This is the Bloomberg Surveillance Podcast. Catch us live weekdays at 7 a.m. Eastern on Apple CarPlay or Android Auto with the Bloomberg Business app. Listen on demand wherever you get your podcasts or watch us live on YouTube.
On the equity markets now, someone who has been a confirmed believer in American capitalism, Benjamin Laidler, joins at Bradesco BBI. Ben, do tariffs matter in the confidence to hold equities?
Yeah, I think they do, unfortunately. I think we're due a bit of a reality check here. I mean, I think tariff complacency is high. I think the Trump administration's emboldened. I think the traditional Trump puts are, frankly, nowhere in sight. And that's just, I think, feeding this loop and maybe further emboldening the administration. So, yes, I think we're due a bit of a reality check. It doesn't make me particularly bearish, looking further out. But I would certainly mind the gap a little bit in the short term.
What do you think we're going to get from earnings here, Ben? Again, we're going to kick off tomorrow with Jamie Dimon at JP Morgan and some of the other big banks. What do you expect this quarter from the corporate America?
Yeah, so I'll be focused on two things. The good news is that the expectations are very low. 3-4% earnings growth, that's a very low bar, which I think everyone's going to easily beat. The less good news, and I think the focus of earnings season is going to be on the company guidance, especially with all this tariff uncertainty. That, I think, is where the sort of rubber may hit the road a little bit, and we're going to maybe get some less good news from corporates. I do think this uncertainty remains very corrosive for corporate America, for investment plans, and I would expect to hear a little bit about that from the earnings calls.
Do you think the markets here, again, we're looking at the U.S. equity markets at or near all-time highs here, again, retracing the sell-off from Liberation Day. Is that too much? Are the markets too complacent about the potential economic headwinds from tariffs?
Yeah, I think we've become too reliant on this taco narrative. It's a sort of boiling the frog scenario. I mean, I think we're going to wake up potentially in a month or two's time and find out that somehow Trump has walked us up from 10% tariffs to 20% tariffs, flipping the sort of narrative on its head. And I think that will have an impact. It's a question, I think, of when, not if. We may start to get a little bit of signs that tomorrow in the inflation print and the PPI print the day after that, and in the guidance from companies. But it's still early, but let's not fool ourselves. It's definitely coming.
I look, Ben, at the tariffs, and right now Yale Budget Lab's at 18%, and they may model it in to a 1934 equivalent. Anybody that's studied this knows that's impossible. Does Bradesco, and particularly with your Latin American excellence, do you have a number that's doable? I mean, to me, if we were at 2 or 3% before, is 5% doable? Dare I say 8% on a blended basis?
Well, I think the market has sort of made its peace with, something like 10. I think the reality here is, though, we may end up at double that. And to your earlier point, the market's at 22 times earnings. That's above average. The VIX is at 16 last time I looked, well below average. I think that's just a very vulnerable, setup. As I say, I'd probably buy any significant weakness. Looking further out, I wouldn't want to bet against corporate America. I would certainly be buying the rest of the world, where you have a sort of double discount of sort of cheaper currencies and cheaper valuations. But yes, I think this could be a sort of long, hot summer with a bit of volatility.
This is a Ben I've never heard. Are you in cash, Ben Laidler?
I would certainly be holding a little bit of cash, ready to buy that dip, which I think is coming. And I would certainly be looking at the rest of the world. I mean, I think the rotation narrative remains in place. I think this is worse news for the United States than it is for the rest of the world economically. And I think the rest of the world has buffers that the US doesn't have. The US still has this double premium of an expensive currency and expensive equity markets, and the rest of the world doesn't. As I say, I wouldn't want to bet too much against corporate America. I'd be looking for opportunities in any sell-off in tech and healthcare. But I do think we've taken the taco narrative too much at face value, right here. I think there are, the Trump puts are still out there. They're just further away. I mean, I think there's maybe a new one you alluded to earlier of the sort of American stomach. What's going to happen when your coffee, your orange juice, your sugar, your beef is all 50% more expensive? Time will tell, and we will find out. Ben
Laidler, thank you so much.
You're listening to the Bloomberg Surveillance Podcast. Catch us live weekday afternoons from 7 to 10 a.m. Eastern. Listen on Apple CarPlay and Android Auto with the Bloomberg Business app. Or watch us live on YouTube.
This was scheduled and to be an interview of Joy talking about the House, the Budget Committee and all. Jodey Arrington is from the Texas that a lot of people, particularly Northerners, don't know. We fly into DFW. Maybe we've got a wandering understanding of San Antonio and down to the Mexican border. But the northern Texas of Abilene and Delbert McClinton and Buddy Holly's Lubbock is just not talked about. Mr. Arrington is of the 19th District in the House of Representatives and with the Budget Committee. Jodey Arrington, thank you so much for joining Bloomberg.
Well, what a beautiful introduction. My folks in the food, fuel, and fiber capital of the world would be very pleased and proud by that introduction.
It is 300 some miles down 83 south to Kerrville. There's people making that drive today. This flood has turned the nation upside down. Give us an update, sir.
Well, it's unimaginably heart-wrenching for the families who've lost, especially their children, overnight. A wall of river that rose almost 30 feet in less than an hour. That area is prone to flash floods. We have a ranch about 3 miles up the road from Camp Mystic, which is at the epicenter of this. And but we've never seen anything like this. I don't know how you could prepare for it, but we're all praying for that community and those families. And there's still folks missing, and I know the governor's committed to, not ceasing the search and rescue until everybody's found.
It's a land of states' rights. It's a land of less federal. You had a horrific winter storm. The winter storms, folks, in northern Texas are glacial. I mean, they're like back to the Ice Age. And the answer is in 1921, Lubbock and Abilene was absolutely leveled, and you dialed 1-800-FEMA to get assistance. Is the FEMA of 2021 the same as the FEMA now?
Well, I hope it's much improved, but I'm not sure that's the case. I think the president's right to push that down at the state, local level, and not necessarily the resources. We're taxed on it one way or the other. I just think folks at the local and state level are probably best to handle it.
So, Congressman, talk to us about this legislation that is a big success story for the Trump administration. I know you had a big hand in it. Talk to us about what this spending bill, this tax bill, what does it mean for this economy, do you think, going forward?
I think it's significant, and it couldn't come at a better time. I know there's some uncertainty with the tariff realignment. I think that will work out in a very positive way when we get these new deals and we have reciprocal trade relationships with folks. So I'm supportive of that. In the meantime, we have supercharged the growth that we saw from the first Trump tax cuts by making permanent, for example, business expensing for R&D, capital, interest expensing, the pro-growth provisions there, and then just tax relief to working families, not just the marginal rates, but improving the standard deduction and making it permanent. And then, of course, there are several working man provisions, tax on tips, no tax on overtime. Families with children get a supercharged child deduction.
How does it impact maybe people in your district, a rural district, for example? Does the folks in your district, do they, like here on Global Wall Street, here at Bloomberg, we talk tariffs all day, every day. Did the people in your district, did they think about that? Or how did they think about some of the economic issues that you're trying to address in your bill and maybe the president's trying to address with tariffs?
Well, on the bill, it's just more money in their pockets, right? That's a good thing for them, and they recognize it. On the other piece, you got ag and energy dominate.
Yeah.
I mean, it is the largest oil patch and cattle feeder system in the world.
I'm in.
And so they understand unfair trade. They understand that it's not sustainable. And I think they're all in to support this president getting to that even competitive playing field.
I'm looking, folks, with us, Jodey Arrington here from Texas. We're thrilled he's with us, the 19th Congressional District of Northern Texas. I look at you, you slipped by in the last election, you won 80% of the vote. I mean, you got to do better next time. The president took Texas with 56%. I don't know do you know off the top of your head what he took in the 19th Congressional District?
A little less than me.
A little less than you. Okay.
Yeah, but we're going to get him up there.
Okay. But the bottom line is, Lisa had this, or Michael Barr today, student loans are going to affect Texas Tech. They're going to affect your Texas Tech. How do you balance the Trump mantra of tear the federal government apart with those 842 kids at Texas Tech that can't go there this fall? I'm making it up, folks. They can't go there this fall because of the student loan shifts he's proposing.
Well, I think the fact that we have all of this student aid and not targeted necessarily the people who need it, I think has an inflationary effect on the cost of education. I'm a former vice chancellor at Texas Tech. That's my alma mater. And the largest
That's what they do with walk-on football players. They give them a fancy job. What was it like when you walked on? I mean, was Patrick Mahomes on the field when you walked on?
I would never have a chance. I couldn't even catch the balls that he throws today.
He throws it hard.
This was under the Spike Dykes era where just about anybody and everybody you could fog a mirror could walk on. And in fact, I didn't play football in high school. And when the recruiter asked me when we sat down right before my physical, he said, "What'd you play in high school?" I said, "Tennis." And he thought, "Oh man, I want to see this."
Can I ask a delicate question? Cowboys or Chiefs?
You know what? Cowboys over the Chiefs, but I'm a college football guy. I'm not really interested. And we're losing that uniqueness in college sports because of NIL, which is another conversation.
Paul goes nuts.
I think we're destroying.
This is another D1 powerhouse, Duke. Paul, continue.
Exactly. Congressman, one of the key topics and key issues for President Trump in his election was immigration. You come from a state that is right on the front lines of immigration. How do the folks in your district think about it? I mean, a lot of these folks that come over, they pick our agricultural, they build our homes, they do all that kind of stuff. They bust our tables. How do people in your district think about it?
Well, I think they appreciate the fact that we don't have Americans that would do the jobs that are needed in the fields, as you mentioned, in agriculture. Right. Probably the same could be said in the oil patch. Yeah. But I think they first and foremost wanted security and a return to law and order from the chaos. It's been devastating. And I was just there with law enforcement. I'm telling you, the gangs, the drug activity, exponential over the last 4 years. So in order to have the conversation that we need to have about legal immigration and making sure we have a win-win situation with people who want a better life and filling the jobs that we need to produce the food, fuel, and fiber, we needed a president with the will to do what has been done by this president in terms of border security. But there's more to be done on the legal side so that we can continue to facilitate the economic growth.
Okay, including agriculture, which is a small matter from Abilene to Lubbock. To cut to the chase, Henrietta Trey's, a beautiful analyst, was on earlier and says they're almost hiding the president's lame duckedness because Jodey Arrington has to get reelected in November of 2026. What's your Republican Party, and particularly the Texas delegation, look like after President Trump? Is this like a moment you guys shift back to, hating Lyndon Baines Johnson, or, what does the framework look like after Trump?
I think President Trump's philosophy and focus on America First is here to stay. I think it's here to stay, and for all the right reasons. And I think it resonates with all the Republican districts, certainly in Texas. I mean, it's a ruby red state. And so putting our ag producers first in trade, putting our families first in allowing them to keep more of their money, putting the safety of our families first. Again, we've been at ground zero in this border crisis for several years now. So I don't think I think it remains the America First agenda into the future. And I think that's a good thing, and I think they will support that.
Does he understand the H-2A program and dairy farms in Texas?
He does. I think he does. In fact, he's the one that led it.
I did that?
Well, in the first Trump administration, you'll recall, he actually pushed our party to a deal in fixing H2A. It was called H2C. It was a reform. It was a much improved reform, along with giving legal status to DACA. He pushed our party outside of our comfort. It failed, ultimately, because we didn't get a Democrat to support it. But.
We continue with Jodey Arrington of the 19th Congressional District. This is Northern Texas. Paul did an all-nighter Friday and Saturday. Did you watch all of Landman?
Oh, yeah, I'm all in. I know everything you need to know about oil and gas.
When you see Landman, is it fiction?
No, I think it's pretty true to form, actually. For better and for worse.
So it's funny, when you think about Texas and energy, obviously you think about the oil and gas, but you guys also have tons of wind farms and solar and all. You kind of lead the nation in a lot of those things. So how does the folks out in your district, how do they think about, fossil fuels versus, alternative energy, I guess is the term. How do they think about that?
I think most folks are for all the above. I just think it's how you get there. Accelerating R&D, for example, where we accelerate the amortization, we make that expensing immediate and permanent in this tax bill. As long as it's technology neutral, I don't think they want the government picking winners and losers. I think they see the good that could come of renewable resources in the future. Obviously, fossil is finite, but after the natural gas shale revolution, we have an ocean of this great resource. And so we don't want a distortion. We don't want regressive inflationary energy policies. We want an even playing field, but no one's averse to all the above, including renewable. It's just how aggressive we've been, A, at accelerating with tax benefits for renewable, while B, over the last 4 years, being hostile to our bread and butter, which has put a lot of people on the defensive.
How do you respond in the bill that Paul mentioned, that the huge benefit goes to the wealthy? Granted, the wealthy on a percentage basis are paying a lot of taxes. How'd the middle class of Lubbock and Abilene fare in this bill?
I think they believe and have experienced that the value of the tax breaks that we extended from the first Trump administration in 2017 are greater among the lower and middle income folks than the upper income. And in fact, the top 1% pay a greater share. And in fact, the top 10% of the income earners in the country paid 70% of all the federal bills. Now they pay 75%. Okay.
You're in and Paul mentioned this earlier, you're in a house, you guys are riding tall. Maybe you lose House, Senate, President here over the next 2-4 years ago. What's your response to how the Democrats have been so ineffective off of the election? You barely won the House. We've witnessed that. You barely won the Senate. Good morning, Vice President Vance. We witnessed that. I mean, are you surprised that the Democrats can't get their act together?
I am.
I mean, in the land of Ann Richards, I mean, she was iconic.
I am. They are still wandering.
Why?
I don't know. I think they're so used to being against President Trump and demonizing him that has become, and then you've got the left that has overpowered their party to the point that it's going to be really difficult to break free from their agenda that is disconnected from mainstream Americans.
Why are you in New York?
Well, I'm here to tell the good news, the gospel of prosperity and security and opportunity that is going to come when you get the right policies and set the right conditions. We've done it, and I want people to know that help is on the way.
If we do a remote from Abilene, Paul, I'll wear the Lucchese's.
Okay.
We'll go down to
Texas boots. Yep. This guy knows his Texas. He knows his Texas.
You have no idea.
Well, you're welcome
Jodey,
anytime.
Jodey, thank you so much for joining us today. He's with the 19th District, the real Texas of Delbert McClinton and one Buddy Holly from years ago. Jodey Arrington, thank you so much.
This is the Bloomberg Surveillance Podcast. Listen live each weekday starting at 7 a.m. Eastern on Apple CarPlay and Android Auto with the Bloomberg Business app. You can also listen live on Amazon Alexa from our flagship New York station. Just say, Alexa, play Bloomberg 1130.
This was going to be a good interview. Now it's a critical interview. In fact, it may be our interview of the day. Joining us now from London, Jane Foley joins us, head of foreign exchange strategy and tariff theory at RaboBank. Jane, RaboBank, with all of its centuries of tradition, has to have a radar on the tariff dynamics. How is the churn now? The 30-year French bond in price has declined over 7% since Donald Trump's inauguration. With the bond market seizing in Europe, is this different than Liberation Day 1, say April 3rd?
Oh yeah, well, good morning, Tom. Well, good morning, everyone. There's a very different feel, and I think we can really extrapolate from what you were just hearing from your former guest, straight back into the bond market, straight back into foreign exchange. The market is just not as worried right now as it was on April the 2nd. Now, in agreement with your previous guest, if we are in for a shock then on August the 1st with significant tariffs, say 30%, 25% tariffs for Europe, well, the market is not necessarily priced for that. And that could certainly send significant amount of gloom, particularly, consider the Eurozone economy. What is Germany facing right now? Well, it's always been facing pretty high energy costs, labor market shortages. And then, of course, you put on top of that the possibility of tariffs at a time when the exchange rate is really quite strong. Well, that is not a pretty picture. And certainly the market will be worried.
Excuse me, Jane, I think I'm talking to Francine Lacroix. I mean, they both went to Wimbledon. I'm sorry. Jane, I'm looking at the linkage here between your litmus paper, foreign exchange, and I got log convexity in the French 30-year bond. Price down big time. Mr. Macron is going, ooh la la, Jane, how are they linked, and does it mean DXY back to 100? Paul gets euro back to 105 before he goes to Rome. I mean, where's the accelerative tendency right now into Trump's second round of tariffs?
Well, again, the market doesn't seem to be that concerned. The market seems to think that what Trump is saying right now is a negotiation tactic. So, it's looked at what Trump has said, what Trump has pulled back on, since April and decided that these 30% tariffs that he was warning about at the weekend are just a threat and won't necessarily be pushed through. So if they do stick come August the 1st, that's going to be a massive, great big shock. Now, in terms of, the French market particularly, we had over the weekend, warnings from Macron or promises that they would step up defense very significantly. Now, that, of course, is in tune with the political sort of wind that's been blowing over Europe for some months now. But it's not clear how that would be funded, how that fits into the French budget that we were all so concerned about, just 6-7 months ago. So, there are lots of question marks over the growth outlook for still Europe. There already were, but if you land, 30% tariffs on top of that, these rise more significantly. And on top of the budgets in most European countries, with perhaps the exception of Germany, there were still considerable doubts. So these are all things that the market is not pricing for, that the euro certainly isn't reflecting right now.
I agree.
Negative headwind.
I agree, Paul. The euro's not showing at the equity markets. JP Morgan tomorrow. Guess what? James Dimon's going to say, we don't care. I'm looking at a chart of the 30-year French piece, and it's log convex, price down, yield up. It's moving.
It's moving.
With a vengeance.
Jane Foley, is it a time to buy the U.S. dollar here?
I think it probably is. The dollar is the best performing G10 currency in July. It's still performed really very poorly from the year to date. But, if you look at what's happened with the S&P, series of all-time highs recently, if you look at term premium or even, on the long end of the Treasury market, it's come off those April highs. So there's a lot of calmness that, we've been discussing this month. And yet it's only really in the last week or so that the dollar has begun to, pick up a little bit of steam. And I think with the S&P at all-time highs, I think we've got to question whether or not that rotation trade that we saw in the first 5 months of the year out of US assets, whether or not it's just pausing, whether or not it's stopped. But there does seem to be a lot more optimism now with respect to the relative resilience of the US economy. And with the market now short US dollars, I think the dollar can recover some ground right here.
110 euro.
Oh, Nirvana. Yeah, I love I'll take a 110 euro come September. Japanese yen, Jane, what's the Bank of Japan doing these days?
Well, the Bank of Japan, I think, is sitting, watching, and waiting, and that in that respect, not that dissimilar to the Fed. The market is concerned because the market is watching these CPI inflation rates in Japan above 3%. Looking fairly firm, but the Bank of Japan is looking at its own measures of underlying inflation, saying, yeah, these are still quite benign, and therefore is taking its time. But there is a cost of living pressure issue in Japan that is dripping through into the politics. It has been quite a while. Ishiba, the prime minister, very unpopular. He could be about to resign if the LDP, lose its position, lose that majority in the upper house elections at the weekend. So there's a lot of stuff going on. They would like to have, a friendly trade deal done with the US administration quite soon, but that doesn't seem to be coming. 3 months ago, Japan was expected to be one of those first countries, but that does not appear to be coming. The Japanese electorate not in the right frame of mind to see Japan give up too many concessions in its point of view to the US.
Jane Foley, thank you so much for the morning brief. With RaboBank on a Monday, Jane Foley, head of foreign exchange strategy.
This is the Bloomberg Surveillance Podcast. Listen live each weekday starting at 7 a.m. Eastern on Apple CarPlay and Android Auto with the Bloomberg Business app. You can also watch us live every weekday on YouTube and always on the Bloomberg Terminal.
What Henrietta Trace knows, she goes on the political campaigns. When you're at Veda Partners, you don't go from town to town. You go from diner to diner. And she knows in Manchester, you go to the Puritan back room, which is Greek New England food. They invented the chicken tenders there. Henrietta always has the chicken tenders with a coconut add-on. That's what you do when you're from New Orleans. Henrietta, I look at the granular politics of the moment. New Hampshire has been Democrat since 2010 as a general statement. I mean, what does the tensions of Pappas, of Puritan backroom, all of New Hampshire with Shaheen retiring, what does it mean about this absolute certitude that Trump could win a third term or the Republicans could maintain power? How fragile is it on a July Monday?
Well, first of all, I do love a chicken tender, so thank you for the opportunity to talk about those. But secondarily, the Republican conference does have some pretty serious headwinds at its back when it looks at the 35 seats that they're defending on the House side, which Hakeem Jeffries is coming out, sort of guns blazing about over the weekend. He was even in Louisiana talking about it. Wow. And then the Senate races, where they're trying to shore up runners who can either stay in the race or staunch retirements. But members do not want to be there, whether it's Shaheen, Susan Collins in neighboring Maine, Tom Tillis in North Carolina. There are a host of members. Joni Ernst is on the perennial list of will she, won't she. The Republican conference is going to have to spend a lot of money next year to stay in these Senate races that they've been able to hold on to, but that are going to come under serious duress, especially with the One Big Beautiful Bill, which has a 71% disapproval rating amongst independents, and the tariffs. So there's a lot of headwinds.
Speaking of tariffs, Henrietta, I mean, we're getting close to that August 1 deadline. I'm not really sure what that means. But one thing we're not seeing is we're not seeing a lot of trade deals, are we? Why is that?
No, we have no deals. We have no text of any deals. And even the one that we sort of have is really more of a framework. That's the one with the UK. What's happening here and what we are seeing increasingly from the foreign nations that we're trying to negotiate with, whether it's Japan, South Korea, or the EU, is a litany of issues. First amongst them is the 232 tariffs. I can't negotiate a temporary IEEPA rate when I have a tariff pending on pharmaceuticals of like 200%, which is what President Trump discussed in the cabinet room last week. When I have tariffs on automobiles, automobile parts, copper, and all these components that could come on and rise at the president's discretion. And those are permanent tariffs. So it's not really in your best interest to be negotiating a temporary IEEPA rate of, let's call it 20, 25%, even though that is highly punitive and well above the original, 2.5% tariff rate that we had going into this administration. But the 232 is at the linchpin. And then you look at Brazil and you see, oh, well, we don't like your political atmosphere, so we're going to launch a Section 301 investigation into you over ostensibly the digital services tax, but we could tariff now anything coming in from Brazil. And that's just two of what I listed in my report over the weekend of 7 different items that foreign nations are considering when they address this administration and negotiate these trade deals that are obviously not forthcoming.
Paul, did you read Henrietta's report over the weekend?
I am reading it right now. I just called out to Lisa Mateo. I said, this is unbelievable. Every week she packs it with unbelievable detail. It's crazy.
It's a chicken tenders.
It's unbelievable. So, Henrietta, if I'm a country and I don't do a trade deal, okay, tariffs are going to go on. But if I'm the president, I don't think tariffs are really polling that well with Americans. So what is the administration to do here?
Yeah, the tariffs are really a problem for the Jeanne Shaheens of the world, for the members that are up next year. As Tom points out, Trump is not up again. He doesn't have to run ever again. The third term stuff is really just to stave off this appearance of being a lame duck. But the reality is that the Republicans in the House and the Senate are the ones who have to run. And they're going to be in a situation where the American public, 87% of Americans, are concerned about higher prices, somewhat or very much. That's a crazy number. So they're predisposed, whether the tariffs are hitting or not, to be flipped out about tariffs.
The street's sort of saying, I'm going to voice this for Global Wall Street, Ms. Trace, that Besson is once again going to have to go in and sit on the couch and say, Mr. President, back off from Liberation 2. Is that going to happen?
I mean, Scott Bessent just said in Aspen last week, mess around and find out, except with different words. I don't know how comfortable that couch is going to be. I think that the administration talks about generating $300 million in tariff revenue, and we're at 100 now. So that math means more tariffs.
Henrietta, we can't wait for the New Hampshire primary. Michael Barr will lead our entourage to the Puritan back room for the chicken tenders Parmesan.
Oh, nice.
It's there.
Yep.
Good morning, Chris Pappas and the Pappas family. Decades of dedication, seriously, to Manchester, New Hampshire, and their wonderful business up there. Henrietta Trace, thank you so much.
This is the Bloomberg Surveillance Podcast. Listen live each weekday starting at 7 a.m. Eastern on Apple CarPlay and Android Auto with the Bloomberg Business app. You can also listen live on Amazon Alexa from our flagship New York station. Just say, Alexa, play Bloomberg 1130.
Back from Chicago, Lisa Mateo. Do you start with the Chicago Tribune?
I do not know. I should have looked into it though for the time.
Article on deep dish pizza?
No, but it was fantastic. I am starting with the Wall Street Journal. This is the look into the super fake luxury handbags. Okay, we're not talking regular fake. This is super fake.
What does that mean?
Yes, these they go beyond. You think fake, right? You pick them up on the streets. Paul, you've talked about it, right?
Yep.
You go where? You go to Chinatown, get something.
Exactly.
But the counterfeiters are making them look as good as the real thing. And the thing is, they're not cheap. You're going to pay between $500 and $5,000 for these super fake bags. People get them on WhatsApp, Telegram. They come straight to your door in like a branded box. They're paying influencers to promote them. So now the younger audience is buying these.
So it's not in Chinatown on a curb.
No, this is beyond. This is a big money deal.
They're mailing it to you.
Yeah, they're saying it's hurting the economics of the luxury brand itself.
Would you buy one? Would you buy a super fake?
Oh, that's a good one. See, I don't know if I can justify paying over $500 for a fake bag.
We were walking down Fifth Avenue yesterday, and there was chaos at, I think it was 54th Street, and it was the Chelsea lads getting on the buses.
Yeah.
Hundreds and hundreds of people.
Really?
Mrs. Keene went mental.
Wow.
She threw her mini Kelly at him, and we didn't get it back. Next.
Okay, so this is for moms and dads who are getting ready to send their kids to college, right? That's my daughter getting ready.
Yep.
A change is coming into how much you can borrow for college and grad school too from the federal government. So this is starting July 1st, 2026. Parents will be able to borrow only $20,000 per year or $65,000 for, a grand total from that Parent Plus program. And then you get to the grad students, right? So they'll have just over a $20,000 annual cap on those federal loans, $100,000 total. And even you look into medical school, law school, they have a cap of $50,000 per year and then $200,000 the total limit. So the question is, where do you go after that?
Exactly. I mean, all of us are living it. We know all of our people nationwide and on YouTube, Paul, are living it. I mean, they're just, the gap here is these teensy weensy numbers versus what it actually costs to put a cherub 1 year through school.
I don't, this is a huge issue, but I don't know when people are going to really rebel on this whole thing. It's just the economics of higher education.
I believe the
totally
administration
broken.
wants to force the colleges to lower the cost, which is, sounds great.
But will it
the
happen?
gap between the numbers you just gave
It's huge.
and the reality is just ginormous.
Right. And then where do you go? You go to these, private student loan lenders. What interest rates are they going to charge? And what does that mean for families? So that's a big issue. So one more. This was in Screen Time. He put together Lucas Shaw. Yeah, he put together some lessons from the first half of the year, and he focused on Netflix. They report, earnings later this week. But so Nielsen said Netflix, Amazon, Apple, right? They're accounted for the 5 most watched streaming shows so far. But he says what's happening is that Netflix is starting to lose its share of streaming because you have companies like, Amazon, Apple, HBO Max, Hulu, Paramount. Like there's more and more and more, and they all have shows in the top 10 so far this year. Their share of the top shows is slipping, but it's still more than any other service combined. I mean, you have to look at it kind of that way too. But he said one thing to keep an eye on are these free advertising supported services like YouTube, the Roku channel, Tubi. They're stealing those viewers from broadcast and cable, so that can give some competition too.
Can't say enough about Screen Time, folks. It's hugely entertaining.
Yep.
It's got music in there and everything.
Yeah, super informative too. Yeah, he's plugged in.
And the movies. I mean, he's doing the Paul Sweeney act as well. Lisa Mateo.
This is the Bloomberg Surveillance Podcast, available on Apple, Spotify, and anywhere else you get your podcasts. Listen live each weekday, 7 to 10 a.m. Eastern on Bloomberg.com, the iHeartRadio app, TuneIn, and the Bloomberg Business app. You can also watch us live every weekday on YouTube and always on the Bloomberg Terminal.